Hi and welcome to the Hi and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm joined by Adama Saccoh. She is a PhD researcher studying the heart-brain axis and founder of life science careers and science communication blog The Catalyst in Me, TCIM. Her university journey followed a love for the human body with a Bachelor of Science in Medical Physiology and Masters in Medical Ultrasound. TCIM started as a flow of thoughts that ended up in a web page that hosts 100 career profiles aimed at answering that dreaded question of what's next through different experiences while also expanding on different aspects of science communication and engagement. Welcome to the YouTube, Adama. How did you start TCIM? I've been following TCIM for a while. What's the origin story of TCIM?
I think it probably relates to like quite a lot of people. So I started off kind of really wanting to study medicine, so become a medical doctor because I like science and I guess that's like the usual pathway. Then I realized, I think quite soon on in my university journey, so the second year, that I didn't really think medicine was for me. So then I went to this Women in STEM event and I was like, you know what, I think I want to start a blog. I want to ask people questions. I ended up just asking people for their emails, like, okay, can I have your email? Would you answer a few questions about your like job and what you do? Because I didn't really understand what a scientist was or what a scientist did, and I didn't have much context. So I was like, okay, if you talk to as many people and then you happen to share it, this could be cool. So I started by just asking people like why they do science, what motivates them to do science, and what their journey is. I had a few of my friends do it as well that were currently in university with me, and then I also had like professionals do it. And I think it just grew from there and followed like the careers I was kind of interested in for quite a while. Then I slowly started expanding it to people that would either reach out or people that I found really interesting and I had never heard of what they did.
Um, Do people, so on TACIM, you have a lot of web pages, you have a lot of like profiles, I guess, of different people's careers. Do you ever get feedback from people reading it that like, thanks for having this web page. I was able to choose my career based on TCIM. Do people actually tell you they've been helped from your career platform?
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of keeps me going each time because I don't think I've been as consistent as I would like to be over the years. Like it's kind of slowed down. But I feel like every month or so, there'll be someone that'll be like, no, this was really, really useful. And especially when I started posting on TikTok, that grew as well because people were just like, oh my goodness, this information is really useful. Because I added like internship information. Like that's one of like my original blog posts. I just keep on adding to that. I've had a few people that like, okay, I've been able to essentially pick what university I want to go to and what course I want to do because of these like clear examples. And I think I've had quite a few people that I've met in person use it to kind of consider different pathways. I know there's someone that became a research technician because of the post that I had put. Also, someone that was interested in becoming a medical science liaison because of a post I did. So yeah, it's been really, really rewarding. Even though I haven't been as consistent as I would like to. There are definitely more people I want to interview, but currently for what's there is actually quite useful for people, and I'm actually happy.
That's awesome. So you're also a PhD student studying the heart-brain axis. So what interesting things have you learned about the heart-brain axis? First of all, I know there's a heart-brain axis because there's part of your brain that regulates heartbeat. Is it more complicated than that? What have you learned about the heart-brain axis as a PhD researcher, and what are you doing in your research right now?
So yeah, with the heart brain axis, you can look at it two ways. I think what you've been explaining was like the brain heart connection. So looking at it brain first and then heart second, which is again how the brain like controls heart rate. I'm specifically looking at it the other angle, so the heart brain axis. So potential effects from heart disease and that how that can be linked to brain disease or brain lesions and how that links to cognitive decline. So if I bring it like kind of back and like a big overview is people with cardiovascular diseases are at higher risk of developing cognitive decline after, let's say, for example, a heart attack. So, for example, after a heart attack, people are more likely to develop cognitive decline later on in life. And I'm essentially looking at heart images and trying to correlate that with brain information because people that tend to experience, especially vascular dementias, have these vascular lesions, or these small vessels disease lesions that appear on the brain. And I'm trying to link cardiac structure and function to the formation, I guess, of these small vessel diseases and lesions on the brain to see how the cardiac, I guess, dysfunction might play a role in that, and just try and, I guess, understand the biological mechanisms between the two.
That's interesting that heart problems have a link to the brain. It really makes me wonder in what ways they're connected. I mean, there's this whole thing about, and I'm kind of like obsessed with this. It's like however much you sleep, if you get REM sleep, so like deep sleep, apparently that's when your brain's cleans itself. So if you don't get deep sleep, you're at higher chance of getting Alzheimer's. You also are at higher chance of getting like heart attacks if you don't sleep enough. And I don't know what the link is there, but it's interesting that things that we didn't think were related to the brain are actually related to the brain. Like the heart is like a different organ. When I was in grad school, we only talked about it, the regulation of the heartbeat being connected to the brain, or this sleep thing. I'm not sure if they know whether it causes Alzheimer's, but not getting enough REM sleep is linked to not having your brain's like cleaning system like actually like clean out your brain, so that leaves gunk in there and that can lead to Alzheimer's. So I haven't been like studying that in quite a while. So what are some things you've learned about science careers through your work at TCI?
Okay, I think before I answer that, I might just go a bit deeper into, I guess, the heart brain thing that we were talking about. Um, So yeah, I think a really interesting thing that you mentioned, sleep, was that the fact that basically risk factors that affect the heart, like disease, also affect like dementia and brain stuff. So sleep is a big one, because that determines a healthy heart as well. Sleep, exercise, blood pressure levels. So all these things that heart diseases and brain disease kind of share risk factors. So I think that's why it's really interesting, like the overlap between the two and seeing how much like why there's overlap, and clearly because there's overlap there might be like similar underlying biological mechanisms affecting both, and I think that's the question I'm trying to understand. Sorry, repeat your other question again, I kind of forgot it.
My other question was, what are some things you've learned about science careers through your work at TCIM?
I think so much. I think the fact that science careers are quite open and there's so much you can do depending on what type of question you want to answer. And I think a big thing that I also learned was when picking your science career, it's better to pick not a disease, like a disease area versus an organ that you like. Because I started, I think, my journey really wanting to understand heart disease or just understand the function of a singular organ. But I realized within like the life science industry, it's not split into like organ level jobs. It's more split into like immunology, virology, imaging. It's split into kind of like mechanisms of disease rather than organ and a specific disease. So if you're more interested in understanding like a specific mechanism through a specific method, that's probably a better focus or a better thing to identify earlier on than an organ you like. Because, for example, if you like neuroscience or you like the brain, there's so many things there's nothing that you would really love, or there's no applicable thing you could really do, like, oh, just because I like neuroscience or I like the brain, I'm gonna it'll be really hard to find what you want to study. But if you say you like, for example, immunology, there's so many ways in which you can understand the immune system in the brain. And there's so many ways you can understand like viruses in the brain, like viruses and different organs. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is like pick a method of science that you like versus an organ of science that you like, because it's quite, that's how you'll find a career that you like as well. Because if you want to do, I guess, science communication as well, you like the act of writing science and you like the act of communicating science, and you don't have to pick a favorite organ. You can maybe pick, again, a favorite therapeutic area that you like reading about and that you really want to specialize in, rather than saying, I only want to specialize in the heart, the brain, the kidney, the lungs, or even just saying, I only want to specify in cancer. Like, I feel like just broaden your thinking. It makes it easier to find a job and a role in science careers.
That's interesting that you say that because I'm a neuroscientist by training. So, I mean, as a neuroscientist, you kind of have the brain and then you have the spinal cord and then you have like a bunch of diseases. I was trained in MRI, functional and structural imaging. That modality was what I applied to the brain, and I studied PTSD and also alcoholism. And before I was a grad student, I studied alcohol use actually. So I think that's really good advice to look at disease processes rather than just like pick a part of the brain, pick a part of the body, because there's a million different ways to study a disease process. And also, like, I feel like for me, anxiety is something that I've always had, and some of it was because I used to drink so much coffee and I just stopped drinking coffee regularly recently, and the difference is just amazing. But that's why I wanted to get into PTSD research, because of like my personal connection to the topic. I think that can be very meaningful when you choose your research topic like that. But I think it's also nice. It's nice when you can say like, oh, I love the heart. I'm just going to study the heart. That's cool too, but I think it's not specific enough for most PhD programs. How long have you been in your PhD? Like where are you at with that, and what do you plan to do after you graduate?
So I'm in the third out of 4 years now, so quite some time. And what do I hope to do after? I think it's still quite a big open question because I've jumped, not jumped, I guess grown quite a lot in my science journey, going from I guess medical physiology to doing a preclinical imaging lab, and now I do more like deep learning, big data, statistical stuff. So it's really changed, and I think it's just evolved with like my interest in things that I've wanted to do. So I'm really just spending, I guess, the rest of this third year to kind of pinpoint or properly understand what type of thing I want to get into, because I think I have two really big skills that are coming out of the PhD, whether it's like statistical science or machine learning, and deciding which side I want to focus on. I think nowadays I could probably find a good in between of the two. But I think personally, I would probably maybe want to push the like imaging, deep learning, and building and training like deep learning models a bit more, just so I can grasp it a little bit more. So that might be what I want to focus on for a few years. Um, yeah, and I think growing, I guess, science communication things. I started a podcast recently with my best friend that I met through like asking her to do a TCIM profile, and we've been friends for like years now, talking about like data science, not and just like health data and stuff like that. So I think building that and just trying to enjoy that a bit more, because I've been a bit quiet with science communication because the PhD is taking quite some time. So yeah, I think I'm quite open at the moment, um, but comfortable with, I guess, staying within the research space to build skills and like deploy different deep learning tools and seeing where that goes and grows, so I can just like grow a bit more independent in that skill. Do I think I'll stay in science forever? I'm not too sure. I do think I want a balance of both though.
Tell us about your podcast.
So it's called The Data Spill. It's really new. It's 4 episodes in, and it's with me and, as I said, my best friend. And she's graduated recently from her PhD. She's an epidemiologist and a real world data specialist. And we both essentially send voice notes to each other all the time, talking about different things that come up. So we just sat down and was like, okay, it'll be really nice to kind of talk about science, and all the stuff that has to do with health data, because there's so much coming out about it. For example, how AI is able to better detect cancers. In the UK, they're like training an AI model on basically a big chunk of our healthcare data over like millions and millions of people. So we were just thinking of a way to bridge what I'm doing, which is like machine learning, algorithms and stuff that I'm learning. And then she has a lot of expertise in like real world data collection, which is what's happening right now. We're collecting data, whether it's enrolling people in larger trials, even through like smartwatch data, and just breaking down the different ways that data interacts with health and what people should kind of know about it and take from it, instead of being like scared that AI is just like black box thing, the way we look at ChatGPT, like, oh my gosh, this magic 8 ball that just tells us everything. I'm encouraging people to kind of, I guess, take ownership of how they want to understand their health data, especially coming off the back of COVID. understanding vaccines is one thing because there might be different scientific layers, but especially when it comes to AI being using that to like predict the outcome of disease, even though that's like statistical science that has been done for such a long time, understanding what the difference is between what we already have done through like statistical sciences that are being like marketed now as like machine learning and AI, and the new AI things that haven't been done before, and what it actually takes to like build it. And also just questions that you might have about different data sources, what people are doing with your data, why it's exciting, skepticisms that we personally have as scientists, but also trying to encourage that back and forth conversation, because I think people should be very much engaged, especially in this space that we're currently in, to kind of advocate for themselves. And you need a lot of information if you're going to advocate for yourself.
I think the consumer AI tools that we have, they're not as powerful as, like, I'm sure there exist AI applications in the biomedical area that are much more sophisticated, that can do a lot of really important stuff, especially with the huge amount of data, especially in imaging. I know there's a lot of statistics involved in imaging because I used to work in an MRI research facility, research lab at Massachusetts General Hospital, and they use statistics to like segment the brain into different segments, and that was like 2006, 2007. So that was 18 years ago. So I thought that was pretty sophisticated. Like, it could take a brain and, based on probabilities, just like tell you where all the different sulci and gyri were. And back then it was difficult. There was some parts that was better to just go in and do by hand, like the hippocampal subfields and the hippocampus, like the areas around the hippocampus they're really prone to susceptibility artifact in the MRI scanner. So they kind of like drop out sometimes, or they're not visible so that they're hard to segment automatically. So we were doing it by hand, but I don't know, maybe the AI has gotten better and it can actually like replace humans, because AI is like replacing humans in everything. There was a woman, I was watching her Instagram, and she said that she told ChatGPT to like give her a diet plan and then write the ingredients that she wanted from the grocery store and then like come up with recipes, and this really whole complicated thing. And I was like, I didn't even know AI could do that. So like, what are the applications of AI in your field, like in the heart field? Like, how hard is it to image the heart, and what kinds of challenges do you have in heart imaging that could be improved by AI?
So firstly, just even like measurements of the heart, like segmentation of the heart. So getting like cardiac measurements that we get for heart structure and function could be done with AI. That's like a probably immediate application that's already kind of done. Um, there's also, I guess, just measuring different things in the heart that we've never measured before because maybe we didn't have the time to, or we didn't think of it as important, by like learning features of the heart. So again, I guess AI is really good at learning like things that humans wouldn't notice, or trying to identify things that we probably wouldn't notice, and then maybe seeing if we can find a meaning off of that. Also, I guess with cardiac imaging, there are ways you can, AI is also being used to kind of up image quality in, I guess, low resource settings. That's a really exciting, I think, example that I've seen. Also, image quality is a big one. AI is being used to kind of also, I guess, decrease like scan times, or trying to, I guess, like quite a lot of applications. Like off the top of my head, probably can't list them all, but those are in the heart field quite exciting areas. And I think with the brain as well, it's similar, like again, detecting just really small lesions or counting things that might be quite difficult to count. But I think a lot of applications in the imaging field are like quantification and detecting things. So that goes across like detecting tumors, whether it's in the brain, the lung, the kidney, the breast, like all images. You could probably use or train similar models to do things like this. So yeah, there's so much being done, and there's so much to be done, but also we kind of have to know what it means when it says it's better at detecting it than doctors, when I guess the information it gets is from doctors in the first place, and what additional benefit, because people, I guess, are hesitant sometimes of like, why are you leaving my healthcare essentially to this black box? Can you explain it? Can you back it? What happens if it's wrong? So I think our podcast also tries to learn, like we try and teach ourselves a little bit more, and try and maybe figure out what people really want to know or what's really important about different things, different data sets, and bringing that scientific like questioning and reasoning to people and hopefully having a conversation. But it's still early, 4 episodes only. So there's quite a long way to go, and we're quite excited about it.
Well, we'll make sure to link it in the description box. Tell us about the events calendar on the Catalyst and Meet.
This started probably like a year ago, maybe coming 2 years now. I realized like I came across quite a few events. I like attending science events, and I decided, I think there was one month, it was March, so I just had so many to like go to or wanted to go to. I think it was at least like one or two a week, which is a lot in my head. That's already like many events. And there were other ones going that I couldn't attend. So I just decided to like do a quick post like, oh, this is like my March. It looks a bit crazy. And then people responded really well to it. So I kind of just continued like events I'll see, especially in the UK, mainly in the UK, because I guess that's where most of the people that follow me are based. And it'll be harder for me to keep track of US events. But yeah, it was just a way to kind of encourage one, myself to attend more events, and two, people to attend different events, because there's so many networking events. There's so many just galleries and things that you can visit that are quite interesting. I think people are always looking for ways to kind of add interest or experience to their science journey. And I thought it was like a really good way. And that reminds me, I need to update the main calendar soon. I was supposed to do it today, but hopefully I'll do it tomorrow.
One thing I've always wondered about is how do you have time for running TCIM and doing a podcast and doing your PhD? You must be really good at time management.
Um, I would say I had a conversation with my sister today. I think I just really I think when I really like something, it just becomes fun and it doesn't feel like I'm doing work. And I realize I'm a better, I think, scientist when I have outlets of creativity, because when I feel like I'm doing too much work and it's if I'm forced to switch off and go do something fun to me. So I think that's really kept the balance. CCIM has essentially been my fun project, my gauge that I'm not overworking myself. Because if I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything for TCIM, it means I've been doing too much other work. Because there should always be like a little bit of time, at least once a month. It did definitely slow down, especially in the first 2 years of my PhD, because I think there was so much learning I had to do. I just physically like there was no capacity, and I think the rate at which I used to do TCIM has definitely slowed down. But I think it's also slowed down because my goals have been changing, and I think I achieved a goal. A big thing was me understanding what I'm going to do in my career next, and I achieved that. So I guess the push to kind of look for more career profiles just shifted because my priorities shifted and I was in a different space. But I guess now that I'm re-entering hopefully the job market soon again, it'll be good to kind of interview more people and get different types of guests that reflect, I guess, the space that I'm in, but also going back to profiles that I did that maybe are missing things. But I think the profiles are also quite timeless. Like, I don't think industries have changed that much currently, that the journeys don't reflect what it's like doing that same role currently, or just the motivations for doing the role. So yeah, I think it's quite fun for me. So I don't take a lot of the things I do as work. The podcast might be a bit more work, but I guess I balance it with someone else, so it's not all on me, which is great.
What else did you want to talk about that we haven't discussed? Anything?
I guess maybe what science are you excited about most currently?
What science I'm excited about? Well, actually, it is a difficult question because of many reasons. There's a lot of science I'm excited about. There was recently a news story that said that I saw the picture of a kid, maybe it was a stock photo. They didn't look, they were just born. Maybe they were just a few months old, but they used CRISPR. The kid had a gene mutation. Researchers were able to use CRISPR to basically change the gene mutation and like fix it. So I didn't read the story, but it sounded like they basically cured this young kid thanks to CRISPR, which I thought was really great because that's what we need science to be doing, is like coming up with cures for stuff. Unfortunately, the hard part about that is because those cures or treatments are so valuable and they like literally change your whole life and like give you a new lease on life. Drug companies think they can price them at like millions of dollars. So that's a huge problem because no one can afford those if they're going to be $3 million, and like I don't know what their insurance would even cover that for like rare diseases. So that's an issue. But that's something that's really exciting. I'm really excited about my own field of addiction science. I recently signed on to this letter calling for um, basically the government to restore addiction science funding. There's a lot of really great addiction research that's still happening out there, and I continue my research without taxpayer funding, so I just do it on my own time. I don't need any money to read a bunch of papers and write something. I started, I never finished my PhD research because I left with my master's, but I have all my old papers. So that's what I was doing over the past 2 summers, is coming up with like a 30-page paper that I can like publish. So I'm going to try to publish that with my colleague because she works in academia. She's a professor and she hasn't really been affected. So that's what I'm going to try to write about: PTSD and what it looks like in the brain and what the different symptoms look like in the brain. And I'm really excited about that because I think at a time where there's not a lot of upheaval in science, I feel really grateful to be able to continue to do science. So what excites you about science right now?
Um, I know I asked the question, but what excites me the most? Um, I think currently I'm quite excited about what impact all this AI can have, and I think maybe we're at a space where science discoveries take a little less time and hopefully we get to see the impact of people's research quicker, because I guess a normal scientific timeline is like 30 years, 20 years. Will that be cut down to like 10, so we kind of maybe see the impact of change of new knowledge? I think I'm really just excited to see where that goes and how we actually take it, especially I think wearable technology, and I think how it's going to change our understanding of human health because we have such granular data on people. And is it more useful having more data, or were we better off just asking very strict questions and only knowing that? But because we have, I guess, so much processing power now, what is that all going to tell us about health? I think that's where my head's at.
That's a really interesting question because we have so much data with all the sensors we have. There could be some really valuable insights and we can like connect them together.
Yeah,
That's what they're doing with that one ring that everyone has.
the
Have you heard of?
ordering.
Yeah. Is that related to your research in a way? I feel like it kind of is because it's like a ring. It measures your heart rate. It measures all this weird different things that I didn't know you could even measure.
Again, cool. We did an episode on wearable technologies as well. Um, but I think Oura Ring, not particularly my research, but somebody else that works, I guess, in my lab does wearables and stuff like that. It's really interesting that the information that you can get from ECGs and their diagnostic potential of things, and also being able to record that many people's ECGs, or being able to have access to maybe repeat recordings over time. So we just maybe are able to probably, hopefully, see how people change in real time. So, for example, let's say someone has a heart attack, most times you would maybe do their ECG there and then there. You wouldn't have like recordings before. Maybe like there's information about the build up before they actually had their first heart attack and what changes they saw. Um, but again, I guess with all this wearables, it's also very concentrated into people that actually have wealth to own a wearable. I personally don't even have one, and I don't think it's like a wealth issue. It's just like it's just not my style. I think the Aura ring might be something interesting, but do I really need a £300 ring? That's not very aesthetically pleasing, and just tells me more about my health that I don't need to know. I don't have an Apple Watch because watches fall off my wrist, or just even like a smartwatch. So I guess whose health data we're collecting might already be like the super healthy. So how useful is that when we probably need people that live regular lifestyles collecting more health data?
But yeah, and there's so much to be done with like figuring out how like the body signals translate to like if you could predict if someone, and I think there are heart monitors that can probably help predict if you might have a heart event, like if your heart rate or something gets abnormal. But as far as I know, those technologies aren't like super advanced. Like the signal processing is like very complicated. So I don't know about the heart, but for the brain, it's like pretty hard to like
Mm.
figure out where the signals are coming from. The heart is also electrical, like the brain, so I
Yeah.
wonder how much overlap there is. Is the heart complex to study from a signal processing perspective?
I haven't really like dug into it. I've very much stuck on like um the imaging and the visuals you get rather than like I guess electrical signals from the heart, but I guess it is also quite like a big field, but I just don't know that much on it, honestly.
Maybe we should just leave it at that. It's been great chatting with you today, and thank you for being on our YouTube.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.